The Bryan Kohberger case involves the brutal murders of 4 University of Idaho students, Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, in November 2022. Below is a detailed account of the event, the investigation, the plea deal, and the evidence corroborating the case, based on the latest available information from reputable sources like the Daily Mail, CBS News, ABC News, and others. The crime. November 13, 2022. On the early morning of November 13, 2022, 4 University of Idaho students were found stabbed to death in their off-campus rental home at 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho. The victims were Kaylee Goncalves, 21, a senior majoring in general studies, set to graduate and move to Austin, Texas, for a marketing job. Madison Mogen, 21, a senior and close friend of Goncalves. Xana Kernodle, 20, a junior who had been awake, having ordered food from DoorDash shortly before the attack. Ethan Chapin, 20, Kernodle's boyfriend, a freshman and member of a fraternity, who was staying at the house that night. The students were attacked around 4 a.m. in a 3-story rental home near the university campus. The killings were carried out with a large knife, and all victims suffered multiple stab wounds. 2 other roommates, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, survived the attack. Mortensen reported seeing a masked male intruder with bushy eyebrows inside the home, who passed by her but did not harm her. The surviving roommates, unaware of the full extent of the tragedy, spent the night together and called 911 later that morning. The crime shocked the small college town of Moscow, Idaho, and garnered national attention due to its brutality and the initial lack of a suspect. For weeks, the community lived in fear as police released few details about the investigation. The suspect. Bryan Kohberger. Bryan Christopher Kohberger, a 30-year-old criminology Ph.D. student at Washington State University, WSU, in Pullman, Washington, approximately 10 miles from Moscow, was arrested on December 30, 2022, at his parents' home in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. Kohberger, who had a master's degree in criminal justice from DeSales University, was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of felony burglary. Kohberger was an unlikely suspect to many who knew him. Former classmates and professors described him as intelligent but socially awkward. His former professor at DeSales University, Michelle Bolger, expressed shock at the allegations, noting he was one of her brightest students and one of only 2 she had recommended for Ph.D. programs in a decade. However, reports also surfaced of troubling behavior, including his removal from a high school law enforcement program after complaints from female classmates and his resignation from a security job at Mount Pleasant High School for unspecified reasons. Kohberger's academic focus on criminology and his prior online activity, including a Reddit post seeking participants for a study on criminal decision-making, raised questions about his mindset. His browsing history, obtained by Dateline, included searches for the University of Idaho Murders, a Ted Bundy documentary, and images of female students, suggesting an unsettling interest in the case and others like it. The investigation and key evidence. The case against Kohberger was largely circumstantial but built on a robust collection of evidence, as detailed by Lotta County Prosecutor Bill Thompson during the plea hearing on July 2, 2025. Below are the key pieces of evidence that linked Kohberger to the crime. 1. DNA evidence. A rattan leather K-bar knife sheath was found on the bed next to Madison Mogen's body, bearing the insignia K-bar and USMC with Marine Corps symbols. The sheath contained DNA from a single male, which did not match anyone in the FBI's database. Our investigators used public ancestry websites to create a list of potential suspects. After identifying Kohberger, authorities retrieved a Q-tip from the trash at his family's Pennsylvania home. DNA testing confirmed a strong match to the sample on the knife sheath, providing a critical link to Kohberger. Blood from both Mogen and Goncalves was also found on the sheath, further tying it to the crime scene. 2. Surveillance footage. A video evidence showed a white Hyundai Elantra, matching Kohberger's vehicle, entering Moscow and driving around the neighborhood near the victim's home multiple times before the murders. The car was seen at the end of the dead-end King Road, where the house was located, around 4 a.m. After the killings, surveillance footage captured the same vehicle speeding away from the scene, heading south toward Pullman, consistent with Kohberger's return to his WSU apartment. 3. Cell phone data. Kohberger's cell phone disconnected from the local network from 2:47 a.m. to 4:48 a.m. on November 13, 2022, suggesting he turned it off during the crime to avoid tracking. When it reconnected, the phone was pinged on a highway south of Moscow, aligning with the surveillance footage of the Elantra. Prior to the murders, Kohberger's phone had pinged in the Moscow area multiple times, indicating he had visited the vicinity of the crime scene on at least a dozen occasions. 4. Witness testimony. A DoorDash driver, who delivered food to Xana Kernodle shortly before the murders, claimed to have seen Kohberger near the crime scene. In bodycam footage from an unrelated incident in September 2024, the driver told police she would testify against Kohberger, stating she parked next to him while delivering the order. Prosecutors planned to use her testimony to establish a timeline of events. A surviving roommate, Dylan Mortensen, reported seeing a masked intruder with bushy eyebrows exiting through a second-floor sliding door, carrying a container. This sighting placed Kohberger in the home at the time of the killings. Additional evidence. Kohberger's Amazon purchase history showed he bought a K-bar knife with a sheath and sharpener, matching the sheath found at the crime scene. His car was described as essentially disassembled inside, suggesting an attempt to remove evidence after the murders. During a search of his family's Pennsylvania home, police recovered a knife, a Glock pistol, black gloves, a black hat, and a black face mask, though these items were not directly linked to the crime. The plea deal and court proceedings. Kohberger's trial was initially set for August 2025 in Boise, Idaho, after being moved from Lotta County due to concerns about media coverage and local bias affecting a fair trial. Jury selection was scheduled to begin on August 4, with opening arguments on August 18. However, in a surprise move, Kohberger accepted a plea deal just weeks before the trial. Details of the plea deal. On July 2, 2025, Kohberger pleaded guilty to all 5 counts, 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary, at a hearing in Ada County Courthouse, Boise, before Judge Stephen Hippler. The plea deal spared Kohberger the death penalty, which prosecutors had initially sought. Instead, he agreed to 4 consecutive life sentences without parole for the murders and up to 10 years for the burglary charge. Kohberger waived his right to appeal, ensuring he would spend the rest of his life in prison. A sentencing was scheduled for July 23, 2025, with prosecutors planning to present a detailed factual summary of the evidence at that time. Prosecution's narrative. During the plea hearing, prosecutor Bill Thompson provided a detailed account of the crime. Kohberger entered the home through a sliding door to the kitchen around 4 a.m. on November 13, 2022, with the intent to kill. He first went to the 3rd floor, where he stabbed Madison Mogan and Kaylee Goncalves to death. Goncalves, who had moved out but was visiting for the weekend, fought back, with her mother later stating she was beaten in the face before being stabbed. Kohberger then moved to the 2nd floor, where he encountered Xana Kernodle, who was awake after receiving a DoorDash order. He killed her and Ethan Chapin, who was likely asleep in her bed. Thompson noted that Kohberger may not have planned to kill all 4 victims, suggesting Kernodle and Chapin were killed because they crossed his path as he attempted to leave. Kohberger spared 1 surviving roommate, who saw him exit through the sliding door. Thompson became emotional during his presentation, pausing to fight back tears as he described Kohberger's deliberate and premeditated actions. He emphasized that while Kohberger may not have intended to kill all 4 victims, the murders were carried out intentionally, willfully, deliberately, with premeditation and with malice aforethought. Defense efforts. Kohberger's defense team, led by Ian Taylor, had previously argued for a delay in the trial, citing media coverage, including a Dateline episode that revealed new details, as a barrier to an impartial jury. They also attempted to introduce alternate suspects, claiming 4 other individuals could have been responsible, but Judge Hippler rejected this as rank speculation noting that DNA and fingerprint evidence cleared those individuals. The defense also argued that Kohberger's autism spectrum disorder, ASD diagnosis should preclude the death penalty, claiming it would constitute cruel and unusual punishment. This argument was dismissed by the court. Victim family reactions. The plea deal elicited mixed responses from the victims' families. A Madison Mogen's family expressed support for the plea deal, stating it provided closure and was the best outcome possible. They described Mogen as a kind, loving, vivacious, and caring daughter full of purpose and promise. Ethan Chapin's family supported the plea bargain, with Stacy Chapin indicating they would attend the sentencing hearing in Boise. Kaylee Goncalves' family strongly opposed the deal, feeling blindsided by its sudden announcement. Steve Goncalves, Kaylee's father, called it a deal with the devil, and criticized prosecutors for not consulting the families adequately. Aubrey Goncalves, Kaylee's 18-year-old sister, wrote on Facebook that a life sentence allowed Kohberger to speak, form relationships, and engage with the world, while their loved ones were silenced forever. The family had pushed for the death penalty, believing it was the only just outcome. Why the plea deal? Several factors likely contributed to Kohberger's decision to accept the plea deal, as speculated by sources like Howard Blum, author of When the Night Comes Falling, a requiem for the Idaho student murders. Overwhelming evidence. The DNA, surveillance footage, and cell phone data created a strong case against Kohberger, making a conviction likely and the death penalty a real risk. Defense setbacks. Repeated court rulings against the defense, including the rejection of alternate suspect theories and the failure to remove the death penalty, weakened their position. Family pressure. Blum suggests Kohberger's family may have influenced his decision, as they were reportedly resistant to a plea deal initially. The defense's mention of his autism diagnosis may have been a strategic attempt to secure a life sentence rather than face execution. A prosecutorial strategy. Lotta County Prosecutor Bill Thompson argued the plea deal ensured justice without subjecting the families to decades of appeals, which could have followed a death penalty conviction. Idaho law allows capital punishment, but no executions have occurred since 2012, indicating potential delays. Unanswered questions. A motive. The plea deal and court documents do not specify why Kohberger targeted the victims or the house. Prosecutors noted no evidence showed he had direct contact with the victims or the residents prior to the crime. A sealed evidence. A large volume of discovery documents remains sealed, and it's unclear if they will be released after sentencing, leaving some details of the case unresolved. A family closure. While some families expressed relief at the closure provided by the plea, others, particularly the Goncalves family, felt betrayed by the process, raising questions about the transparency of prosecutorial decisions. Conclusion. The Bryan Kohberger case, one of the most high-profile murder cases in recent U.S. history, concluded with a plea deal that spared Kohberger the death penalty in exchange for life in prison. The evidence against him, DNA, surveillance footage, cell phone data, and witness testimony, formed a compelling case that likely pressured him to plead guilty. While the plea deal provided closure for some, it left others, particularly the Goncalves family, feeling that justice was not fully served. The case highlights the complexities of high-profile criminal prosecutions, including the balance between ensuring conviction and satisfying the victim's family's need for justice.